The Baltimore Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It just doesn't sound right, although there has been some movement before, if not city from city. When the AFL and the NFL merged in 1970, the Modell and Rooney families agreed to move their franchises from the NFL over to the AFC, but only if they could go over together. It's been a bizarre series between the two ever since. Usually when they play in Pittsburgh, it's always the Steelers who are omnipresent. We'll talk about that in a moment. But in 1989, at least for 1 year, things changed. Bud Carson made his debut as head coach of the Browns in the stadium where he had built his reputation as a defensive mastermind. As Chuck Noll's defensive coordinator from 1972 to 77, Carson was the architect of the steel curtain defense. But Three Rivers Stadium may never have seen as dominant a defensive performance as the one Carson's Browns leveled on the Steelers. It started with Robert Banks forcing a Tim Worley fumble that Clay Matthews recovered for a touchdown. Before the first quarter was over, the Browns defense struck again. Lewis Lips was stopped on a reverse, and David Grayson stripped the ball away, raced 28 yards for a 17-0 lead. Trailing 30-0 at the half, the Steelers opened the third quarter with another Worley fumble, which led to Tim Manoah's second touchdown of the day. On Pittsburgh's next possession, Grayson picked off Bobby Brister's pass, went 14 yards for the Browns' third defensive touchdown, and a 44-0 lead. The 51-0 final was the Steelers' worst loss ever. The numbers staggering. 8 turnovers, 6 of them converted into scores. 7 sacks, including 2 by Big Daddy Carl Hairston. 53 yards of total offense for the Steelers, another all-time low. The Steelers lost their next game early that 1989 season, 41-10 to the Bengals. So obviously they were a team going nowhere fast. Wrong. They managed the wild card spot and really were only a John Elway comeback away from reaching the AFC title game. As for the Browns, they did make it to the title game under Carson, where for the third time in 4 years, Cleveland was beaten by Elway and the Bronx. With Art Modell taking the Browns out of Cleveland, or at least it looked so, Elway said, quote, "I'm no longer the most hated guy in Cleveland." As the Cleveland Browns get ready to play perhaps their last game in Pittsburgh, Browns fans will be hard-pressed not to think of all the years of frustration they've had at Three Rivers Stadium. From the building's opening in 1970 through 1985, the Browns made 16 trips to Pittsburgh, came back losers 16 times. The Three Rivers Hacks, the subject of tonight's Distant Replay.
Webster defines the verb to hex as to affect as if by an evil spell. In the NFL, hex is defined as that which happened to the Cleveland Browns whenever they played in Pittsburgh's Three Rivers Stadium. In their first 8 tries, the Browns were outscored by 132 points. In the ashes of these 8 straight losses, the Three Rivers Hex was born.
I think it really wore on the Browns that for no talent reason, for no apparent reason, they couldn't beat them.
It had to be voodoo. Just couldn't get the breaks and couldn't get the job done. So to this day, it's a puzzle to me.
For the media and the fans in Cleveland, I mean, they're putting more pressure on the team to win here down here in Three Rivers Stadium.
And it just got to a point, I think they came in here so tight that it bothered them so much. You know, they just couldn't win.
They had something working for them we didn't know about. Maybe it was the hex down there.
You want to see the killer for Cleveland today?
Yeah, right here.
We got the Italian
That's
whammy.
the big red pepper, the Italian whammy. We put it on. That means Cleveland can't do nothing.
It became like their brains got a little scrambled at the hex idea, and Modell started trying one thing and another. You know, he'd change hotels, he'd fly one year, then he'd bus them in the next year.
On one bus trip, the Browns went directly to the stadium and sprinkled Cleveland Stadium dirt underneath their bench.
We had been driving the bus down there, and what we did was we flew down there. It took longer to fly because of where the airports were located, but they thought that would break the hex. We had a lot of different people traveling with us that didn't make any of the other trips. You know, some were black, some were white.
They had a witch doctor come in, try to cast a spell, and then remove the hex.
Art Modell is a very nice man, so I would always walk over to Art and say hello. It got to a point where Art wouldn't talk to me. He thought maybe it was bad luck. When I used to get that question asked to me as the years progressed, you know, what's the jinx? I said, the jinx is we're playing the Steelers. We played Carnegie Mellon. There'd be no jinx. That's the jinx. We're playing all those great players. As it went on, it became more and more difficult because that's all they talked about. You know, we couldn't break that jinx. We couldn't beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. But we went into that game and played the entire game. Nobody scored a touchdown. So we go into the overtime, and they win the toss. They fumbled the kickoff. I'm sending the kicking team into it right then and there. The jinx is over, and we're out of here. And somebody says, Brian Sipe looked at me and said, Coach, they ain't going to give it to us. I said, you got to be kidding. They're not going to give it to us. The guy fumbled the ball.
Then we came up and uncast directions of Chuck Noll. We were on a flea flicker for him.
Here's Bradshaw giving the ball to Blyer. Blyer reverses it to Swan. He gives it back to Bradshaw. Bradshaw fired for Cunningham. A Pittsburgh touchdown. How about that? A Pittsburgh touchdown to win the ball game.
Win, lose, or draw, as far as I'm concerned, you are all that matters to me. And regardless of what happens, it was a game that was going to be pivotal for us. And the reason why was, if we were going to go to Pasadena, we couldn't go through Cincinnati. We had to go through Pittsburgh and work our way west to Pasadena. I'm dreaming again. To Pasadena. Block that son of a gun! Come on, baby, block it! Come on, baby, one time. One time. One time, baby. One time. One time. We lose the game 33-30. Again, 2 years in a row at Three Rivers, overtime against world champions. We take them right down to the wire. But, you know what is important is to, you know, you can have the rose, but we got the thorn, they got the rose.
And it is coming down to the final nail-biting seconds at Three Rivers Stadium as the Browns try to break the 10-year jinx.
Bradshaw rolls out, and he finds Lynn Swan in the corner of the end zone. I know on the other side, they had to be in tears, because they're sitting there saying to ourselves, well, we won this ball game. It's over, it's done. But we were able to come back. It just happened to him too many times. I can remember that game looking at Lyle Alzado, who was absolutely drained. I don't know what I can tell this guy. This is the third year in a row, and that was very, very difficult.
It's the night before the game in 1983 to play Steelers in the stadium. It's an important game for us. The lights go down, a screen drops out of the ceiling, and we watch about a 30-minute montage of the team, and the guys, and the hard work, and the camaraderie. And it's all to the eye of the tiger. Obviously, the intention was just to fire us up to some new heights, to which I answered with a 6-interception performance, and we left town customarily with our tails between our legs.
The losing streak reached 16 when in both 1984 and 85, the Browns lost on late field goals. One with 5 seconds left, the other with 9 seconds to go. And so, amid much hand-wringing, Marty Schottenheimer took his shot at the hex and refused to be affected.
Marty's a big believer in positive thinking, so he doesn't really want to dwell on negative thoughts and negative streaks, obviously like the Three Rivers Jinx was.
It wasn't until 1986 that they finally broke that streak and won a football game, and I'm ashamed to say I was a starting quarterback for the team that year.
At long last, all the bounces went the Browns' way, and the Three Rivers hex that had lasted for 16 years was broken.
I knew it was special when we finally beat them, and Marty stood up and said, everyone gets a game ball for finally winning in Pittsburgh. And at that time, we had a much better team than they did. And I thought, well, you know, we should have done it way before. You haven't won there in 14 years, you haven't won there in 15 years, you haven't won there in 16 years. And we finally beat them, and the comment was, you have only won once in 17 years.
I'll just never forget the bitterness in the Pittsburgh locker room after the game. They were in shock that not only the Browns could beat them, but that, you know, we lost this game in this rivalry. We don't lose to these guys.
Think history can't repeat? Well, think again. Since 1990, the Browns have played 6 games in Three Rivers Stadium. They have lost them all.
Distant Replay is brought to you by Chrysler Plymouth and your local Chrysler Plymouth dealers.